Welcome to this webinar. My name is Darren Smith, and this is a masterclass on co-piloting your child to a tic-free life. I lived with tics for over 20 years of my life. I had the movements thousands of times every single day, and these days I am tic-free. And I'm going to share with you as much as I can over the next 45 minutes to an hour on this condition and how to heal this condition for your child. So you've come to the right place if you are the parent of a child between 7 and 17. So your kid or teen is roughly this age, and they are currently living with a motor tic, a vocal tic, and or Tourette's. Tourette's meaning motor and vocal together. So either in any of these, and that the ticking body that your child is experiencing, it's been going on for more than 3 to 6 months. So in all honesty, if it's just like a few weeks, at this stage it's really nothing to worry about, and it's more than likely going to fade away. But if it's got to the point where it's been 3 months, 6 months, or even longer, then there are things that you can be doing to support them and to help them move beyond the conditioning. So you've also come to the right place as well if you are looking for a natural solution and you want to stay away from, let's say, the pharmaceutical band-aids that are sometimes offered by the medical industry. So my story is that I've learned how to heal this condition. I've helped many other people do it too, and we're going to get into that in the webinar today. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be getting up to. So first, I'm going to share with you my story of living with tics and Tourette's, how I came to be 99.9% tic-free from the condition and from these tics after living like this for 20 years and thousands of times a day, my body's moving. How this led to, let's say, my unique discovery of how to heal this condition for initially calming, then managing, and then completely stopping tics. I'm going to share with you a simple exercise just for you to take home for yourself in relation to your child. And then I'm finally going to present you actually an opportunity to join a longer term program if that is something that you want to join or not. Either way, you're going to get a lot of value out of this presentation for your information and for your child and their healing journey. Okay, so let's get my screen moving. There we go. So I've been doing this work now for 5 years, supporting people with tics and Tourette's. Both kids, parents, and adults who live with tics. I consider myself an embodiment coach, a breathwork instructor, and a CBT practitioner. Over 3,000 people, roughly 3,000 people, have now been through my programs with wonderful success and powerful results. And I've personally worked with hundreds of people with specifically tics and Tourette's over the last 5 years. So my expertise is quite niche, right? Like I very much focus on this condition and this condition only over the last 5 years. And even before that, obviously my healing journey has been a trip too. So yeah, 20 years living with tics. I consider myself now 99.9% healed. And really that's the reason why people end up working with me, because I have a deep and intimate experience of the condition and with the condition. And there's ways that I can relate to adults and kids who are going through this in ways that people that haven't felt this can't. And that's some of the gold that I offer in both my videos and online work. So just a couple of testimonials before we get into the journey. My son, 14, is transformed because of his work with Darren. After his first cycle of sessions, he no longer tics like he did before. Instead, he pauses and breathes and works to be present in his body. Now, this isn't always the best approach. You know, the younger kids can't actually go about regulating themselves and becoming aware of themselves so they can change their habits as easily. That's why necessarily habit reversal therapy doesn't often work, because we can't always do it this way. But nevertheless, for the slightly older kids, it is possible with embodiment practices, which we're going to get into, to start becoming aware of our connection to the body more deeply, which is powerful and important if the body's doing things by itself. So it's remarkable to see the change in him. He's learned to connect, to relax his body. So then we've got Catherine. This was a younger boy, and one of the tools that they picked up and they used regularly was this tense and release. It's all about body awareness. It's a lot of what I offer and share. No more tics. It feels like a miracle. I love testimonials like this. It feels like a miracle because quite often, if you've been watching your kid tic for so long, and suddenly you're watching them melt away with a few tools, then it does seem like a miracle. But actually, it's just grounded in science and awareness and connection, like mind-body connection. Our little boy is no longer crying from the pain in his neck from his tic. Thank you so much. That was Catherine. So Kevin said his tics have been largely controlled, almost no head shaking, no arm twisting, but still some light vocal stuff. We are very happy with the result. It's good to remember that, like, the work that I do here, it's human beings aren't like computers. We don't just switch on and off. It's a journey. It's an experience of healing that might take some time, but with the right steps and the right guidance, it's possible to make significant changes in a being, young and old. I encourage you to continue sharing your experience with thousands of more patients who, like me, will appreciate what you offer. So I really appreciate that comment from Kevin. Sharon, this is probably the most generous and heartfelt, sensible course I have ever seen. I appreciate this too because it comes from my heart. It's not like I've learned this stuff in books, right? And then tried to help other people because I learned about it in a book. I've lived this. And I've lived this for a long time, from when I was young, not having it, to the point where I was in my teens when I very much had it and ticking for like 20 years, and then going through this healing journey. This one's from Isla. I think she was like 10 or 11 years old. When I was watching the videos with my mom, I was so relaxed I could fall asleep. Every time I listen to the meditation or your voice, I get relaxed and I fall asleep. Then when I wake up, I don't tic. Then I feel happy for the rest of the day. I love this sweet message. But it's important to note here that obviously meditation, mindfulness, this is actually quite a small part of what I share, what I'm going to share. But kids can often resonate and relate to the fact that I've been through it and I have this deep sense of peace in the context of a ticking body. Like, my body has had to become so restful now after this journey. And she can feel that. And that's beautiful. And Abdul is actually one of my adult clients. And he officially cured his tics, and he just sent me this message. I've officially cured my tics, and he had got to the point in his life where he'd followed the tools for a period of time. I'm not sure exactly how long. I think it was like 4, 5, 6 months, like a good period of time, actually. And they were gone. They're now gone. So thank you for the help. So that's Abdul. So let's get into where it started for me, so that you can maybe relate to my story in the context of your child. So I started ticking around the age of 12, 13-ish years old. And I do remember before that I had this kind of OCD type behavior for sure, where I kept on pulling up my socks and things had to be in an orderly fashion at home, like this kind of obsessive compulsive need to do something, sort of mannerism in my being. But by the time like high school started, it had evolved into these involuntary movements, and they started for me with like nose tics like this. Like I had to keep like doing my nose like this And it was a lot, right? And then like, it was eyes blinking, although the eyes weren't as common as the nose one for me. And then it kind of moved to like my jaw, and I was like playing with my jaw a lot. And then it moved to my neck, and I was like just rubbing my neck. And I had to just rub my neck. I just needed to rub my neck. This compulsive, obsessive like need, you know. I was feeling these urges. I think that's a good introduction to the urges in this moment. Is that there's always an urge before a movement, and those of us that tick, the urge and the movement become one, but it's possible to kind of break that out with embodiment awareness, so we can see the urge and appropriately, possibly, potentially act differently in some situations. So yeah, so nose, eye, neck, shoulder, and then to the point where like throughout all my 20s, it was like my whole arm was like twitching like this. So I wouldn't say that it was this constant need to tense. So the urge created this constant need to tense something and feel something. It was like I was trying to or needing to feel the body. That makes sense? That's what I experienced. And it was incessant. It was kind of never stopping until I went to sleep. As soon as I laid back on the bed and I went to sleep, like I switched off and I was fine. It wasn't a problem at night. But during high school, for sure, I was bullied. Like so many of my friends would call me twitchy, and I vividly remember this one moment in my life when I was at school. We walk into a class and you sit down, and you know the class goes quiet, and I remember one of my friends just yelling across the classroom to me like, "Morning, twitchy," and it was the most embarrassing moment, probably one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. Like that dread, that embarrassment, that shame of who I am, the part of me that I can't control, what I'm doing. And to be witnessed by the whole class, and that was quite traumatizing when I look back at it right now. But I didn't know what to do with the anger about it, right? You know, maybe some people would respond with anger in situations like that, right? But I didn't know what to do with anger, because anger was an inappropriate emotion to express into the world. So I just pushed it down. And so my emotions, I just kept learning to push down. And so high school was pretty hard. Like I just tried to fit in, okay, which resulted in more like social anxiety and just repressing and trying to be normal, right? And what's normal, right? What's normal in this world? But at the same time, like, yeah, it was hard back then. This was back in the early noughties, of course. So I didn't want to be seen. I had this weird thing going on, but at school you just kind of get on with it, right? And I was always trying to hide my tic. So I was around people, and I was always worrying if someone was going to see me. I got really good at glancing away, holding back, being hypervigilant, and I was sort of becoming aware if people were noticing me or not. And maybe if you're a parent of a child, and it depends how old your child is, but maybe you might have started noticing that already with your kid. Like they're already starting to like hide it a bit from you or other people. Now, blessed you are if they haven't got to that stage. It's much better it's much easier there's like less work to do, let's say, if we get to the stage before that where they haven't started feeling the shame and the embarrassment yet. And only you have started feeling it, that, oh, I want to help them in some way. So that's a good place to start engaging, which might be one of the reasons why you're watching this webinar, of course. So my mother did take me to the doctors like a couple of times, but like they didn't help. They didn't know what to do. Like my tics weren't so bad and violent that like medication was the appropriate option. And anyway, I was kind of so good at suppressing it, I didn't really kind of show it to the doctors anyway, right? I was trying to hide it because it was really embarrassing. So I had all of the symptoms, to be honest, as well, of ADHD when I look back at those times. But back in the early noughties and the 90s, those these mental health conditions weren't as diagnosed as easy by the medical industry. These days, like, every person left, right and centre's got ADHD, right? And it's just part of the brain development in a very hyper overstimulated world that we live in our current culture. So I never got diagnosed with Tourette's because I actually only had like a chronic motor condition. So it was just my body that was moving. It wasn't like vocal tics. But with the work that I've been doing over these years, like, we want to address the urge itself that creates either the movement or the sound. And let's be real, a sound is just a movement anyway. So natural healing gets to the urges, and that's what I'm going to share with you today. We want to get to the urges. That's the most important thing here. Like the initial thing that creates the movement or the sound. So yeah, the doctors were just like, wait and see, wait and see, wait and see. So I just kept waiting and seeing, and it just carried on, and I just kept getting better at suppressing and pushing it down. I actually spoke to my mother and my father recently about it, and I was asking them, like, so when like this started for me, what did you do? What was going on for you? And you know what they said to me? They were like, we just didn't know what to do. We just didn't have a clue what to do. The only thing they knew to do was to take me to the doctors. They did it a couple of times, but nothing really unfolded from that. And so they didn't. They just left it, and they ignored it. And it's taken me on a wild journey because I lived with it for a long time. But that's not necessarily the case for all kids. Like, some kids do genuinely grow out of it. Others live with it until their adulthood or for a very long time. Some get very, very good at suppressing it and hiding it, like I did, but still inside, I was still like, there's still stuff going on. So I kept suppressing, right? Feelings and emotions. And in the end, I got to this point where I was like a volcano, right? I was like inside, I was like this volcano ready to explode whenever something kind of triggered me. And I'd come out in like bursts of anger because I didn't know how to regulate or move through and around my emotions, because all I had learned to do was suppress. Pushing the urges down as much as I could, the best I could. And that's not something that I recommend whatsoever. So, because I didn't address it early on, like my 20s was just anxiety filled. So I'd become this kind of socially nervous kind of wreck inside. But in all honesty, if I were to ask my friends, like, they would just say I was social, I was charismatic, I still had a normal life. I still went out and did things and went to the pub with my mates. I still played football. I still did a normal life, but I was living in this constant state of hypervigilance, and that sort of carried on throughout my 20s. Because whatever happens in our teens, those neural circuitry is often kind of not cemented, but formed a little bit stronger than when we're younger. And that kind of strengthening then happens throughout the rest of our life, unless we know how to go about sort of activating the neuroplasticity and changing those parts of the brain, which we're going to get onto later. So I always knew, I believed, I always had hope that I wouldn't have to live like this forever. And so that kind of hope in me always pushed me on this journey of learning everything I could about the brain, about the human brain, about psychology, cognition, neuroscience, epigenetics, polyvagal theory, evolutionary psychology. I studied everything. Like my OCD tendencies took me into the world of becoming obsessed with learning about this condition. Right? Because I wanted to understand it. I wanted to get it. I wanted to break free, to fix myself, to heal myself, because I always believed it was possible. But nevertheless, so I lived in this perpetual state of stress. That was my life throughout all my 20s. And tiredness and just pain in my arm, because my arm was like this, and I just had so much tension and pain here, because I didn't deal with it when I was younger. And self-worth, right? Because I just had low self-worth because everybody was judging me all the time, or I thought everybody was judging me all the time. Right? So I'll tell you where it changed for me and get into some positivity if you've been on that journey with me just then. Thank you for your patience. So it was at 30 that when I was 30, something had to change for me. I couldn't ignore it anymore. The tension was so bad that I got diagnosed with carpal tunnel syndrome, which I think is an old person's thing. But I had caused so much tension and ticking in my arm that my wrist was tightening up and I had to wear supports, which meant that actually my livelihood and my work as a designer and techie in London was being threatened. So that was like the final straw for me. It was too painful to just use a computer and get work done. So I really ignored it for as long as I could until I had no choice but to like sort it out. And I remember the exact moment where the decision point happened for me. And it was my desk job. I was in London. I had a deadline coming up. I was feeling anxious. I was looking at my computer, and I was ticking. My whole body was ticking like this, and I was jogging the whole table. I was on a shared table with 3 other people, and I was jogging the whole table. And I remember this moment vividly. My colleague in front of me, like, she just looked up at me, and like daggers, she looked at me in the eye, and I just remember that moment so vividly. It was such a powerful, significant moment because I felt powerless to stop it. And yet I knew that I was affecting her. I knew I was like distracting her, knocking the whole table, but I couldn't do anything about it. I felt so powerless. And like, I was just in pain. Like, I was embarrassed, and I pushed it down. I ignored it. But at that point I was like, no more. I don't want to live like this anymore. And so something changed. I went on a bit of a journey. So I, within 6 months, I'd saved up some more cash and left London. And I knew I needed to get out to nature and have a break free from these kind of same rigid habits that I had created in my life in the big city. And that got me into this place in the first place. So I started learning everything I could about health and healing and medicine from a different perspective. I learned everything I could about science gave me, that science had given me from brain science and from the mind and from just like fiddling with neurons and all this stuff, right? And pharmaceutical meds, like, but none of that it didn't work. And so I learned about a more connected, a more whole way of healing this being, a more natural way of healing a human body that's suffering in some way. And this style of healing and health is more about prevention. It's about well-being. And my focus was always on the urge, not on the tic itself, but on the urge that precedes every tic. What is the urge? Why am I feeling the urges? What is that? Right? The tic is the symptom of the urges which are like overwhelming the system. So I tried it all, right? I tried dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of therapies and healing modalities and tools and techniques across so many different disciplines, right? Some helped a bit, some helped more, some didn't help at all, right? Some were grounded in science, like good solid science, and some were, let's say, a bit more esoteric, a little bit more woo-woo, right? But I was thorough. I wanted to discover this human experience, and I wanted to heal myself. I've lived this experience of healing, and it's invaluable. It's invaluable. It really is. So I remember actually this one class, this breathwork class I did in Bali, maybe 7 years ago now, 7, 8 years ago. And wow, like I came out of this breathwork class and I just felt this serene sense of like in the breathwork class, we were doing lots of very powerful, fast, like breathing like this. So to activate and overwhelm the sort of the system in a certain way, so that certain toxins are sent around the body to cleanse and heal, and so your body's like alive. And I remember coming out of the class and my whole body was just serene. It was so still. And it lasted for like 3 days. And at that point I was like, this is possible. Like, I've just experienced for 3 days what it's like to live in now a perpetual state of... Now that didn't last for a long time, but I got a taste of what a serene, still, relaxed body is, and that inspired me even more. So as I kept doing these different tools and modalities of healing, I started to notice bit by bit a difference, right? Like the tics were becoming less frequent, less intense as well, right? And I could see this kind of light at the end of the tunnel. I was like, yes, I know this is possible. Well, that hope and belief over the years is now showing itself, it's realizing itself. I can see it. But it wasn't until I actually started combining, right? Started bringing together like a series of specific practices and aptitudes in the way that I was living and what I was doing, where I started to see these major breakthroughs. And at this point, when I consistently did this stuff, like my whole body, it was just melting. The urges vanished. The calmness was just imbuing my mind, and I was finding a piece of equilibrium in my being. It was a beautiful place to discover again. So, what was great about this? I'm just tuning into what was great about this. It was like, it's like at the time, I was with my previous partner, but I could now sit, right? I could now sit next to my partner and not annoy her. And maybe you can relate to that as a parent. It's like they are doing this thing all the time, and they're kind of annoying the people around them, right? In some way, if we're really honest, it affects the environment. And so there's a reason why we want to help our children, because it causes an effect on the environment, And because I was more present as the tics had dissolved, I could just have better conversations with people. I started noticing that I could just be present and have a good conversation. I was no longer distracted by this constantly moving, twitching body. I could be in conversation with people. I could feel people. I could notice stuff. Right? I wasn't feeling the anxious swirls anymore, right, of apprehension when walking into a room of people. And it might be that your child, at this stage, if they're on the younger side, aren't really feeling this yet, and that's great. But if they're on the older side, they might well be starting to notice some of these things, but they can't necessarily articulate it either, because our emotional, let's say, regulation or awareness education in our schooling system is pretty much non-existent. And most parents haven't been taught about emotional awareness and regulation either. And so all this stuff kind of festers under the surface. And so I was just living now with just so much more less fear in my life. I was calmer and just safer moving through the world. So I was supposed to put a photo of me on this slide, but I didn't do it because I've got my head popping up instead. So I wanted to tell you instead, that which tools I started doing very briefly here that made the big difference with the breakthrough. And I'm going to get into it deeper in a moment when I get into the MTM family method. But right now I just want to say that I started learning how to regulate my nervous system, and it was so powerful when I started to learn how to do that, to speak the language of the body, essentially. There was very specific movement and breathing practices that I started to do, because I needed to grow the connection between the brain and the body. because somewhere there's misfiring going on. And there was movement practices I was doing that when mind, body, body, mind, they become more connected and more one. Okay. I also was integrating these sort of primal reflexes that we have as children, or as babies, as infants actually. And if they aren't properly integrated into the brain, then it can cause a knock-on effect with the brain development. But also emotionally, I just started relating to my body differently. I started being less angry towards myself and the thing that was going on, and started holding myself in compassion. And also I changed some dietary stuff too. Right? And so it's not a simple condition, it's a complex condition. Right? And there's far more simpler conditions out there to go and deal with. Like, I've thoroughly done my research and thoroughly gone through this process and watched other people heal as well. And this is the stuff that works. What I didn't realize actually at the time, what this structure that I'm briefly starting to share with you here is, it ended up being the MTM method, which was the initial adults program that I created 5 years ago. And now the MTM family method, which I'm making available too. And this is for kids and parents to go through the journey of healing in a natural way. So I'm going to share with you that in a bit, but I just want to talk a little bit more on the urges themselves, to help you get a grounded scientific understanding of what's going on here. So the best description I have, right, is the urges are electrical impulses between the nervous system and the brain, but they are getting, let's say, a little bit confused or stuck or lost in the circuitry. Okay, so I always felt like the tics were like an electrical current, like it's quite fast, right? It's quite sharp, and you've probably watched this in your child. They're very sharp. It's like something's getting stuck or firing wrong or something like this, whatever wrong means, you know. But urges were always like that for me, inside, sharp, impulsive, firing, right? It's not like a higher functioning brain experience that creates tics. It's a lower functioning brain experience that creates tics. It feels very raw, very deep in the circuitry of the brain. Okay, to ground what I'm sharing into some science, I want to share this with you. This is an abstract of a scientific paper from 2023 on emerging therapies in Tourette's. Advances in electrophysiology and neuroimaging have elucidated and made very clear that there is a reduction in frontal cortical volume, which is the area of the brain that houses the premotor cortex and the primary motor cortex, and a reduction of long-range connectivity to the frontal lobe from other parts of the brain, from and to other parts of the brain. So let me get rid of the science and just share with you what's going on in the less sciencey stuff, right? So the area of the brain that deals with the motor movements isn't as developed and working as well as people who don't have tics or Tourette's. So that area of the brain literally just isn't firing as much or as often or as well. Cool. There's less activity going on there. Number two, the electrical signals that move between the motor cortex of the brain, right, and the rest of the brain, it's like those electrical signals are having to go through like side streets instead of freeways and motorways. So the circuitry hasn't been necessarily been like created through those parts of the brain that allows the energy to move through as seamlessly and as easily and as quickly. Okay. So the beautiful thing is, brains are incredibly plastic, meaning that with advances in neuroplasticity, like we now know that brains can adapt and shift and change if they are stimulated in the right way. If they are stimulated in the right way, okay, they absolutely can change, right? And like a lot of the belief was like back in like, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever, like back in the day, it was, your brain's formed and it's fixed and that's what you're dealt with for the rest of your life. And that's just not true. It's absolutely not true anymore. It's false. The brain adapts and changes and shifts if we learn to deal with it and move with it and activate it. So it's our role now to stimulate, right, this part of the brain. So this is what we do in the MTM family method. We are stimulating some of the oldest parts of the brain, specifically the oldest parts of the motor cortex and coordination. So we bring together the relationship between the higher motor functioning parts of the brain and the lower motor functioning parts of the brain. We do that through sort of the exercises to integrate the primitive reflexes. But alongside that, we're also activating the polyvagal system, polyvagal nervous system, in order to bring about, let's say, a sense of calm and peace, relaxation, rest and digest into the whole nervous system. Thus the nervous system sending signals to the whole body to slow down. To slow down and create space. Right? So I teach the language of the body. Right? That's the best way that I can describe it. In the MTM family method, we teach the language of the body through a range of different tools and practices. Okay? So tools to regulate the parasympathetic nervous system, exercises for the integration of the primal reflexes, and science is telling us pretty much all kids with things like ADHD and OCD have at least one, or if not multiple, of these reflexes not integrated into the brain. So what's really important too is our emotional regulation. So there's like the balance of the nervous system, but then there is becoming aware of the emotions and being able to articulate emotions and notice and feel and sense emotions to the point where the child is more accepting of what they're noticing in their sensitive body. Because we're never going to get past the urges if they are immediately trying to run away from the sensations. So we have to do that stuff so that they can really sink in to the movements. So they can sink in, let's say, to the presence and the sensations that are created in very specific movements that stimulate the deeper parts of our brain. Okay. So the somatic movement exercises are connecting the brain to the body, body to the brain. This is about awareness. Okay. And there are things that we need to check with the stomach and the gut as well, because if the gut is inflamed and the body is overly sensitive and or has sensitivities, then we find that the nervous system has to work really hard. And if the nervous system is working too hard, that creates stress on the whole system. So no wonder, right, their system is having to work like and their body is like stressed out, ticking. So there's many things that are going on here in the method that we need to go through. On top of that, we also have videos just for you as a parent, okay? Because you are your child's environment, right? Their mental and emotional well-being, right? Their mental and emotional well-being is being directly influenced by you all the time. You are the sea that they swim in with thoughts and emotions. And although they're going to have their own unique thoughts, emotions are transferred to us all the time to one another. So if you haven't prioritized your mental and emotional well-being for 30, 40, 50 years, and your child is showing signs of mental and emotional unwell-being, then it's a sure sign that maybe there's an opportunity for you to improve yourself too. And so part of this is also what are some simple things that you can do on a day-to-day basis as a parent for yourself that has a knock-on effect to the environment of your child. right? And some of these are just for you. Some of them are for you and the environment, so that your child picks up this stuff from you in like a natural way, as opposed to he's got to learn it, or he or she has to learn it. They have to do it, right? Which is quite an aggressive way of teaching. So the MTM family method is it is the only that I've come across comprehensive, non-invasive, follow along at home, natural healing program for tics and for Tourette's. And it's been designed by someone who overcame the condition. It's a 10-week program, so we go through this whole journey week by week over the 10 weeks, and you're guided through it step by step. And it's for kids aged 7 to 17. And it fits any lifestyle. Like, you don't have to be so precise with the weeks. If you miss a week, it's okay, right? If you don't do all of the exercises in one particular week, it's okay, right? But the more that you commit, the more you find a way to support your child to go through the exercises, the quicker the process is going to take. Okay. So, just to give you a little bit more insight into how the MTM method is structured, there are 10 weeks of videos, but each week we have 3 different types of videos for you to watch. So there's one kind of follow along video. It's an interactive video for you and your child to follow along to. And it's playful, it's joyful, it's bonding. I kind of, with my words and with my deep experience with the condition, I bring light to quite difficult things to talk about, right? Because the tics, they're quite difficult to talk about for young people. And so I bring light and I bring in new language so that you guys can talk about stuff which is difficult to talk about. Okay, so that's hugely beneficial each week, and it's interactive and it's playful, and you just watch that video once. After that, you also get a video or a series of videos, depending on which week, with like the follow along practice or practices to do. And so your child will do then the practices for 4 to 5 times every week. Roughly 15 minutes 4 to 5 times a week is needed. Kind of minimum. If you do it less, then sure, it's just going to take longer. But you want to stay kind of committed to the process and do this regularly for many, many weeks to stimulate and activate the parts of the brain that we've been talking about. And finally, the lessons for you to support their environment. Okay? Obviously, the parent-only lessons, you don't really have any homework. You're suggested to do things throughout the week for yourself and for your child, but it's not like rigorous homework that you must check off like a good student. Okay. So yeah, these tools, these practices, they are setting your child up not only to stop the tics, but to be resilient in a world which is creaking at its seams, in a world which is just intense, overly stressful, with lots of distractions, with lots of screen time. Like, this is the stuff that brings us connected to the body, which is so important in our world today, when everyone's disembodied and lost in their mind or absorbed in virtual worlds. So yeah, we're setting them up for resilience, for prosperity, and for success in the future, not just to relax the tics and stop the urges behind the tics. It's like, if you can't look after this body, how are you going to look after anybody else in one's life, you know? If a body's ticking, how can we look after anybody else? If we can't look after our own matter, right? So that's why, for me, this is so important. This is my life's work I've put into this 10-week program, my wisdom and experience. So I want to just give you a little taste, just a teeny little taste of one of the parent practices. Okay, so I'm not going to share with you here the kids' practice because the kids probably aren't watching this. But I want to give you something to take away so that you can put something in practice that's going to be beneficial for you and your family. So after speaking with so many parents over the last 5 years, one of the concerns that I see again and again is that you as a parent become really worried about your child. So I've just blasted you and just talked non-stop for like 50 minutes. Let's stop for a moment and just connect with you. So I want you to think back to the last time that you saw your child tick. Maybe that was today or yesterday or just 5 minutes ago. And I want you to ask yourself, what's going on for me? Are you really excited that you're watching your kid tick? Are you distraught? Are you angry? Are you sad? Are you ashamed? Are you worried that you've let them down? Some parents go through that story like, this is my fault, it's all my fault, I need to, right? It's all of these kind of thoughts or feelings, it's natural. It's natural as a parent to experience this in that state of, I don't know what to do, I don't know what I'm feeling, I'm not sure what I need to do, how do I help them? There's panic maybe too. So just acknowledging to yourself what you notice. Okay. And next time you tick, sorry, not you tick, next time you watch them tick, I want you to do this instead. Okay? Next time you see them tick and you feel a bit of overwhelmment in the emotions of what's going on, am I worried? Am I thinking about something? I want you to take your hand, right? I want you to put it on your stomach. I want you to take a big breath. And do this with me now, if you're not already. And again. And you're doing this and you're stopping the thoughts by just feeling the body. By noticing our breath instead of thinking about or worrying about what's going on outside of us, we bring our attention to the body. We're bringing your awareness, your attention, your consciousness, your most precious resource to your own body. And your body needs that in this moment if you're worrying about your child. You need the emotional regulation, not your child. So this is really important to start bringing your attention back into yourself, because most mothers, and I don't know if it's a mom or dad watching this, but most mothers have just freely given all of themselves to this little human being for years and years and years and years, and they came through you like a leaf through a tree. They are you in some way, and yet at the same time, right, there's a journey of letting them go into who they are, whilst also honouring yourself and obviously caring for them as they grow up too. But the best way to care for a child isn't to be panicking or to be worrying or to be scared or to be fearful or right, it's to acknowledge your emotions first. Okay? So hopefully that is a loving reminder to take care of yourself as you're worrying about your kid, if that is real and if that is true for you. I've just had this conversation so many times with parents. Yeah. And so from this place of regulation, of putting your hand on your belly, taking 3 breaths, from that place, you're far less likely to lash out or say something in response or tell them to do something differently, and you're more likely to offer words that will come from a little bit more of a loving place versus from a reaction. Okay. So that's a little takeaway practice. Give that a go this week. When you notice your child ticking and you notice yourself worrying about them, or back to the body, focus on the body, take a breath. What am I feeling? Good. Okay. So that's a little taster. So I'm going to move over to the website and show you the MTM method on the homepage.